infinite complacence, people went to and fro of the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
So on this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Brian on with me, and he has several different encounters and experiences to share from really all over the world, actually. I'm very excited to dive into this. Brian, welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I would assume that we would start maybe at your first experience and work up or down, however you want to look at it from there.
All right. Yeah, so I was about 4 years old when my dad retired out of the Air Force, and he bought about 20 acres and built a house on it. And that was really when I first started to notice things. And I was sleeping in the guest room one night, and I could hear like a girl's voice call my name, and it woke me up. And at first I just kind of waved it off. Maybe it was a dream or something. And then it would happen every so often throughout the years. And I could never figure out why anybody would be calling my name like that. And no one else ever heard anything. And then maybe a few years later, I was about 9 or 10, me and a friend was out in the woods, and the same voice called my name, maybe 3 feet from us. And we both looked at each other and asked him if he heard it, and he heard it. And then we just ran away. And then we got to a chicken pen we had with turkeys and geese and all that in there, with their backs against the fence. And we heard a crazy loud roar coming from behind us somewhere. So we looked around, couldn't see nothing. And then we just got up and ran back in the house. And that was the last time we went out for the day. And it was kind of like a sound between a bear or a lion. I'd never heard anything like it before. And then never heard anything before that or after that that made that sound or the girl's voice.
And do you mind sharing what state all of this occurred in?
Upstate South Carolina. And then inside the house, you would normally hear like footsteps and real faint whispers. And there's always like in the other side of the house, no matter what part of the house you are, it always happens like on the other side. And it always kind of makes you guess, like, is it my sanity? Am I really hearing something? And then one morning I had woke up because I heard all these footsteps running back and forth through the hallway. And I thought it might have been my little nephew and nieces. But I remember my parents were supposed to have been gone. And I was in the house all alone. All the doors were locked. When I got up thinking they were there, but it was there. I could hear like laughter and running. And that was another one of those times it just had like a random event. Never heard that laughing or running like that after that.
That's interesting. So do you think then that it was one thing or that it was different spirits or entities in the house?
I kind of think it's probably different ones because I know the area, there was like Civil War battles and revolution through there. So it's hard to say what went on.
Right.
But the house was a newly built house, so it's not like it had any history in the house.
Well, I was definitely going to ask that because you get a house on 20 acres. The house might be new, but the land is not. So goodness knows what the land has seen, as you mentioned.
Right. And I used to ride the bus to school, and I was out there early one morning, and the sun was just starting to come up. And I looked up the road, and I could have swore I seen what kind of looked like maybe a Confederate soldier kind of walking down a few steps and just kind of dissipated in the air. And it was another one of those things you kind of question yourself, was it just the light or was it foggy? But it looked just like if a person was walking with a gun against his shoulder.
That's a cool sighting, but also a little sad, right?
Yeah, and then like where it disappeared in the woods, there's like a mound of stones that kind of look like they've been carved into blocks. So I always wondered if there was something to that area.
And your dad never saw or heard anything in his home?
Not that I know of. And my mom, she don't want nothing about it. She don't want to hear nothing of it. But she did say one time when I had called her for me to hold on, and then she came back to the phone and said it sounded like people were walking around the house, and she was the only one there.
Mm.
And that was the only time I ever heard any of them say anything strange.
So at that point, did she already know that you had heard that yourself, or did you tell her at that time?
I had told it like in passing over years, but she just didn't want to hear nothing about it or didn't believe it.
Maybe it might be a little bit of both, especially since, if you have to live in a place, you probably don't want to call too much attention to it, or once you admit it out loud that oh yes, I think this is going on, let's talk about this, it might freak you out more. I mean, you have to sleep there and live there and be comfortable there, so I get that.
Yeah, she's pretty scared of the topic too.
Oh, really?
And another strange thing with the guest room, my niece, she was pretty young and was sleeping in there. And I woke up to her just screaming. And my mom ran down to check on her. She kept screaming and pointing in the corner of the room saying, him, the man. And then we just kind of chalked it up to a nightmare. And then years and years later, my grandma was living with us and staying in that room. And she woke up screaming too, saying there was a man staring at her from that corner.
Did he look like
Any man or had anything like that happen? Yeah.
Yeah, did he look like a fully formed? I mean, what was the details? Was he see-through? What was he wearing?
I don't know. They never like explain it. They just said it was a man, but they wouldn't say like what it looked like or anything. And the only, I guess I could say an apparition, I had woke up, and at that time I was in a bunk bed, and when I looked towards the door, it was just like it was a figure that looked like a person, but it was still like a fog or something, and it was slowly coming into my room. So I got freaked out and went under the bed sheets for a few minutes. When I peeked back out, there was nothing there again. That was the only thing close I would say would be like man-like that I seen there.
I mean, did you get to a point where you had trouble sleeping, or were scared to be there?
Um, Maybe just get a little spooked out for a few minutes and then just kind of wave it off. Because a lot of the times I couldn't really say for certain if it was 100% this or that, so I just kind of just went on with my day.
Now, what about the whispering? Was it always your name being uttered, or was it saying other things?
Yeah, like the whispers was just like real quiet whispers. Like you could tell words are being said, but not loud enough you can make it out. And the voice that said my name, that was like a very clear, normal speaking voice. And the whispers would just kind of happen like if it were in the room over or kind of in the hallway from where you were sitting. It was just enough for it to make you give your attention to it. And then you couldn't hear it no more.
When it called your name in just a normal speaking tone, did it sound like anybody that you knew?
No, I tried to put a face to it, but it's nothing I could ever recognize. It was just like a normal, nice sounding voice.
And what exactly were you doing when you heard it?
First time I was sleeping, and the other times I was just like watching TV. And then that time we were out in the woods.
Now, as far as this roar that you guys heard when you were sitting in the chicken coop, I mean, obviously back then you weren't going to be looking on the internet for Bigfoot reports, but since then, if you kind of got into Bigfoot at all, did you go and look up for similar reporting in that particular area?
Yeah, so when we first moved there, I started to watch like In Search Of and all those, but I never thought Bigfoot. And it wasn't until maybe the last couple of years people would talk about hearing something similar. And I might have had a Bigfoot sighting. That's another thing I wasn't sure of. I was outside, maybe I was 6 years old, and I was playing in the dirt, and the geese we had just started going crazy. So when I look, I could hear something walking through the leaves, and it was just like a black shape that was slowly coming in my direction. Then it stopped behind a tree. And I just kind of sat there trying to figure out what I was looking at. And then I turned back to look at the house. And when I turned back again, it was gone. And then the geese had settled down. I couldn't hear any walking. And I walked to the tree and I couldn't see nothing through the woods. And I looked up the tree and I can kind of make out like a black shape, like way up in the leaves. But again, another thing I just couldn't make heads or tails of.
So whatever it was had climbed the tree?
That's what it looked like. It wasn't moving or anything, and it was too far where I could see it clearly enough to make out what it was.
Did that freak you out? Did you boogie out of there?
Yeah, it freaked me out, but I didn't run. I was just kind of like frozen, just trying to figure out what it was. It wasn't that tall or anything. If I had to say, maybe 5 or 6 feet. I couldn't see any details on it, just like a black shape standing in the woods there.
So maybe like a teenager or young adult Bigfoot type situation, possibly. That's cool.
It could be.
I mean, I'm sure the big ones, the really big ones, if they wanted to climb, I'm sure they can climb, but you don't normally hear of talking the really big ones, 8 to 10 feet in the trees. That would be pretty astonishing. And I would hazard to say that if you saw something that big up in a tree, it might change your idea of the woods for a while. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I probably would have ran then.
Yeah. Something about them being up in the trees. I love it, but it does freak me out because you know, when you're out in the woods especially for Bigfoot purposes, you usually have your nose trained at the ground. You're looking for footprints or whatever. You're not thinking, let me look up in the trees. I don't know. It's a freaky idea.
It's one that I'm starting to come around to more because we stare at the ground too much. I think it probably spends more time up in the trees.
Do you ever go out for purposes of Bigfoot research or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done it before, but I've never seen anything.
I mean, do you think that you would want to see something super close like that? To know what you were looking at for sure? Like it was that close?
Yeah, just maybe out of arm's reach. But I would like to see something where I can have that definitive sighting.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to say something about you saw something with...
I was down in the creek, and in the sand, there was a perfect shape human footprint. But the size of it wasn't much bigger than my foot. I was probably maybe 12 at the time. And I kind of think it's probably more paranormal for that case than a Bigfoot.
Now, why do you think that?
Because the shape of the foot was too human, like too perfect human shape. And the size was being too small than what you would expect. And it was just a single footprint. And I looked all around, tried to find like another footprint coming from it. That was it.
Yeah, that is pretty weird. Even if it is a person, how or why would they even just leave the one footprint then, right?
Yeah, it would have been impossible the way the mud and everything was going up the embankment. And neighbors, there would have been nobody down there where I was.
Going off the idea that what was the time frame between you seeing what we were surmising was a young adult Bigfoot in the tree possibly, and then this footprint? Was that around the same time?
No, the sighting, I was probably maybe 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then the footprint, I was probably somewhere around 12.
Okay. Was there, for the footprint, was there a way for a creature that is extremely fit, let's just use that term, I guess, extremely fit and good at what they do to jump from a tree or a rock to that point and then get to another tree or a rock or something that would cover more, making a second track?
Probably not likely. Just the space of the creek to where the footprint is and where the next tree would be is just a little too far.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting then. That single footprint, that would creep me out because then your mind really starts to go, well, how? How if it's a person? How if it's a Bigfoot? How, well, if you're people like us and you have Bigfoot even in your lexicon, in your vocabulary. But yeah, that is interesting then, that single footprint. Was there any
I looked
other,
all around.
yeah, was there any other out in the woods, as a kid or, a teenager, were you ever out there and went, oh, that was really weird? And I'm not even going towards Bigfoot, just anything strange.
Yeah, there's been I would say like marching. You would hear like footsteps marching and like real light drumming. Kind of makes you think like the Revolutionary War where they would have the drummer boys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my birthday, and I had some friends spending the night, and we were all in bed. And me and another friend was in my room, and the other two was in the guest room. And the next morning, we all came out saying what we heard. You could hear footsteps walking through, and maybe some voices shout, and the drums. But when we looked out the window, there was nothing out there.
So when you have a sleepover like that, did the friends go, oh, that was so cool, I love your house? Or did they not want to come back to the house after that? Did that freak anybody out?
Yeah, it was like it freaked everybody out, but then made everyone excited. Now they want to hear more things out there.
What about natural rock formations and water in that area? Do you have any or both out in that particular spot?
Yeah, the whole area is a lot of quartz and rock under the ground and the creeks.
It definitely goes to maybe this, paranormal stone tape theory and water and all of that kinds of things for the proliferation of energy, and especially with wars and pain and suffering and death. I mean, again, it's cool to hear, but it's sad.
Yeah, my dad had talked about on our property or the property across the road, there was a house that was used as a Civil War hospital.
Oh my goodness.
But I never seen any remnants of a house.
So that house was taken down, but he knew that there was one that was used as a hospital during the Civil War. Holy smokes. Yeah, what a history you guys have on that side of the country.
I don't know who told him, but someone had lived there a long time in that area had mentioned it.
Do you think your dad, is he kind of the no-nonsense kind to where he may or likely has had any experiences in his home and he just wouldn't talk about it?
Nothing he ever talked about. He's open-minded, but never really says much about the subject.
Now, I know on your list in your email that you also mentioned your friend's farmhouse. Let's talk a little bit about that.
If I just got one last thing about my house that was pretty terrifying for me.
Oh, absolutely.
I came home from school, I think maybe 14 years old, and I was the only one home at that time. And I was in the bathroom, which is at one end of the house, and then it goes into the kitchen. And I was in there, and I could hear someone running like a full sprint from the end of the kitchen all the way down and stop right at the door to the bathroom. And it was like real heavy stomping, just full sprint. And I thought maybe someone broke in the house. So I swung the door open, expecting to find somebody, and there was nothing in there. And then I just ran outside, and I could hear a door from inside the house slam so loud, and I could hear it out there where I was.
See, so that is interesting to me because obviously when your name is being called, that means they know your name, right? So that's very interactive. That would not be because they have residual hauntings and they have what they call active hauntings. So like the man that you saw with the gun and the Confederate clothing would be like a stone tape theory, like a movie playing, a residual. But then this, as you said, this is a newer house on obviously land that's been around a long time. This running into through the kitchen and then up to the door that you're in is extremely interactive. So that's also not a residual situation. That is definitely terrifying. I would have freaked out about that one.
Yeah, that one shook me up a little bit. I stayed outside until my mom came home.
Oh, I don't blame you. And then you told her about that?
Yeah, but she didn't believe nothing.
She didn't. I mean, do you remember what kind of explanation she tried to give you?
She didn't say anything about it. She just said, just your imagination.
Mm. You're like, yeah, that's why I'm sitting outside for
Mhm.
for hours waiting for you in my imagination. Oh my gosh. Well, especially at 14. I mean, you're not, this little tiny kid anymore, and you're trying to, you're probably staying at home, as you said, by yourself. You're starting to do all these independent things. So you don't want her to think, oh, I can't leave him alone anymore. I mean, why would you make that up?
Yeah, as loud as it was, I just thought someone had broke in the house or something.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. That definitely sounds like different things because if you got female voices and then super heavy footsteps, it sounds like maybe a man wearing boots, I guess is kind of where you're going with that, right? Like it definitely sounds like there's quite a number of interactive things in that house. Is that house still, I'd imagine it's still around, right? People still live in it?
Yeah, my parents still live in there.
Oh, they still live in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you, I mean, you're grown now and you don't stay at your parents' house anymore, I would assume, but have you ever gone back there and stayed there the night or nights or hung out there and heard anything still?
Yeah, it's probably been a few years ago. Me and a ex-wife were in there checking up on things while my parents were gone on vacation. And there was a box of old photos and letters. And I started reading a letter from my grandma. I think it was dated like 1990. And as I was reading it, there was a door or something had slammed in the back of the room. And I got up and checked out the house, and nothing seemed out of place. All the doors were still open. It's probably about the only thing I've heard in recent time.
Yeah, so unless they're focused on you for some reason, even though your mom has said that something has occurred to her, they have to have things go on. It sounds like such an active location, an active house.
And I think just with a lot of the things, it's so small that if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't even really notice it.
Right,
Especially TV and all that going on.
right. Well, and I think that's why people assume that nighttime's so more active. And in some cases, that is true. It can be true. I'm not saying, but it's a quieter time. Like you said, TV's off. You're maybe sitting reading a book or laying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. And then boom, things that probably, I mean, absolutely during the day you wouldn't have heard, you're going to hear at night.
Yeah, I was sleeping in my bed, and my nephew was in the bottom bunk, and everyone was sleeping. I heard the door like had opened and then closed real hard that it made the latch sound. And then when I looked, the door was wide open again, and I looked down the hallway to where the bathroom would be, thinking my nephew had gotten up. And I waited and said, "Man, he's taking a long time." And then when I looked down in the bottom bunk, he was out cold sleeping. So I got up and looked around. There was no one up. Everyone was asleep.
Would these entities ever interact with lights or physically move things? Would things go missing? Anything like that?
No, not that I ever knew.
Well, was there anything else that you thought you should share from that property?
Um, I think it was about it from that property.
Well, yeah, go right ahead. If you wanted to discuss your friend's farmhouse, that sounds pretty cool.
And so it's like a story house, and he had a bunch of family that lived, beside of him, and they had a lot of maybe 10 acres of just field behind the houses, and then woods back behind that. And one night he had called me. Him and his cousin was outside his house in the backyard, and they had all their lights on. And he said there was an animal or something. It was making like this weird, like arf kind of sound. And they would hear it way back, like 10, 20 acres back towards the woods. And then 2 seconds later, it would be 10 feet from them. Then it'll be 100 feet away. And then it'll be back closer again. And he had me on speakerphone, and I could hear it. I could hear it like way back, and I could hear it right beside them. And they were all freaking out, didn't know what it was, and they had all the spotlights out there shining, and there was nothing. And they stayed out there for about an hour and a half until his parents came home, and they didn't stop. It's just another one of those weird sounds that never heard it before or after that again.
Now, how far was this friend's house from your house?
It's probably a good 30-minute drive. And then another time we were having lunch and we were sitting at his kitchen table, and I was sitting with the back door to my side, and then behind me was like a little hallway that led to his parents' room. And he was sitting on my left, and he had a little miniature pincer dog, and he was trying to get her food and all that. And then all of a sudden he turned and just started going crazy, looking down the hallway. And he would run down the hallway, bark, and then he would come back. So me and my friend looked down the hallway, couldn't see nothing. And then the dog just came back, started to beg for food, and again took off running, barking. And then this time I got up and I walked down, and he was staring into the parents' bedroom. And I looked around, there was nothing in there, just real dark, and just kind of felt weird. So then I came back and sat down. He said, "No, did you see anything?" I was like, "No." Then the dog came back again, and then he turned and started barking. And we both looked where the carpet of the hallway met the tile of the kitchen. It was a perfect impression of a footprint. You could see like where the heel press, then it rolls down to the toes, and then back up. And then after that, we just took off running outside. And his parents were out there, and they thought we were crazy.
So,
we told them, "Man, there's a footprint."
but did you take them inside to show them? Of course, then they might have just thought you guys did it. But did you try to go, no, look?
No, it wasn't a footprint that stayed. It was like as something was actively walking on
I
the
see.
carpet.
I see.
No, his dad had seen like people in the house before, so he believed us a little more.
Well, so he's seen. So what did he describe? Do you remember what he said he saw?
He saw, I want to say, like an old lady, like in 1800 style clothing, like up the stairwell. And he's seen like an old man in one of the rooms before. And it's just another newly built house on old land. Seeing someone wearing the 1800 style clothes when me and my friend were way out in the woods. That was probably maybe 5-6 years ago. We were coming back down towards where the creek is, and I seen like something pink. And when I looked, it was maybe a girl around 9 years old, and she was wearing kind of like a little house on the prairie kind of apron, like a pink long sleeve shirt, a bonnet in her hair, holding a little wooden basket. And she was walking real slow away from us. And as much noise we were making, anybody would just stop and look, see who was out there with them. But she never stopped. She never looked. She just slowly kept walking further into the woods. And then my friend, he kind of got spooked about it. So we went back to his house and we asked his mom if he knew there should be any kids out there. Said no, nobody that lives around there would have any kids.
I wonder if that's the same girl that... Did the dad say what color dress the girl in the house would wear?
No, I think the girl he had seen was like an older lady.
Okay.
It was just weird because it was just such solids. Like it wasn't anything you could see through, or it was just like a perfect person walking.
Were you close enough to see if she was barefoot or wearing anything on her feet?
I couldn't really see her feet because the dress was pretty long.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a creepy and sad sight. That whole area just has, I mean, I would love to. I mean, look, you're just going for walks or drives, and you guys are just seeing this stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you never expect to see anything, and then there it is. And sometimes it just could be months or years before ever really notice anything else happen.
Right.
And then another night, I think it was like a birthday party. And we stayed up all night, and then we finally went back to bed like 5 a.m. And his room was like, there was a staircase over a garage, and they had the room above it. And we had just laid down, and something came running up the stairs real loud and stopped right at the end where you would turn the corner to where the beds were. And we jumped out of bed and looked, and there was nothing anywhere there. And went down and talked to his parents, and they said they never went anywhere on that side of the house. And then we just stayed up the rest of the day after that.
It's so similar to your house. And, it makes you wonder if you went and knocked on all the doors in this, just pick any radius out there and ask them if they have footsteps or voices, or do you see apparitions? And, the list, how many people would pick points off that list or have the whole list?
I can imagine most of the area, even my grandparents' house, they live in a 100-year-old home on a mill hill. And they would talk about a light would come on, people would pull their hair, no one would be there. And I've been in the house, and they would sit across the room from each other in recliners. And my grandpa would just get real mad and say, "Why are you pulling my hair?" And then my grandma would be like, "How can I do that? I'm sitting way over here."
She's still getting blamed, and she's not even close to him.
I know in that house there was an old lady before they moved in that had died. So maybe it could have been her.
Trying to get things pinned on your grandma.
Yeah. But what happened to her too?
So beyond the pokes and pulls, what kinds of things are going on at the grandparents' house? What other things?
That was the main thing. And my grandma had said every once in a while when she cooks food, she would turn around and her knife would be missing. Or some kind of utensil would be gone, and she would look around and come back, and then there would be there again. And she was a real religious woman, so she would open up the back door and use her broom like she was sweeping, telling the devil, "Get out of the house."
Hey, that's better than nothing, Speaking your intent with a broom or not is good. That I like that. Do you think do you remember her saying, "Oh, it's quiet in here now because I, swept the devil out"?
Not really, because again, like months later, something else would happen like that.
Yeah.
My uncle would always joke about it with her. See, if you don't be careful, the devil might kick you out of the house.
Let's hope not. Do the homes out there have basements? Do you have basements out in that area?
Mostly it's like crawl spaces.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably good, because I was like waiting to see, I wonder if there's a basement story, but not all homes in the East Coast have basements. So yeah, crawl spaces, even worse in some cases, but those aren't places that you go hang out. So then it's okay.
Yeah.
If you're in the crawl space, it ain't good.
Yeah, back at my friend's house, going up the road from them, they had a real big church. And the church had like a full-size gym with a basketball court and like classrooms and all that. And we had went there on his birthday, and I think it was maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning, we snuck in there and the gym door was open. So we were in there skating around and throwing the basketball and stuff. And then we were getting kind of thirsty, and there was a kitchen. And they said, "Why don't you go and see if we can get some drinks?" So me and one of the friends, we went through the double doors and the real dark, creepy hallway, and we found the kitchen, and the kitchen door was locked, and we both tried pulling and wouldn't move. And we could see with the light on in there, there was like a cart with drinks and chips. So we went back and told the others. And maybe about 20 minutes later, we all went to the kitchen, and that door that was locked was propped wide open now. And it was open so wide that we had to like really pull to get it closed again. And it's one of those kind of like heavy doors that automatically close after you open it. And then me and that one friend, we were just freaked out after that because there was nobody else in that church. And we had walked around and no one.
And you would have had the key to get that door open.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
And we just never could explain it. And that one friend's mom, she had seen a like a real young girl sitting on the stairs outside of the church, crying like in her knees. And it's probably maybe around midnight. So she turned the car around to go back and check on her, and she was gone. Me and that friend, we used to go to the graveyard they had behind the church and walked around. But never had anything spooky happen out there, though. And The only last thing I have about his house, sadly, he had died accidentally. So me and another friend had went to visit, and his mom brought us up to his room, and we're just kind of in there talking. And his mom had stepped out, and the dog that was in there started like almost like choking and wheezing. And then all of a sudden, me and my friend both felt like something maybe had like manifested near where his bed was. And you could just feel an overwhelming sense of like regret and sorrow just sitting there beside us. And after a few minutes, it just kind of disappeared.
Now, how long after his death was this visit to his house?
Maybe 3 days.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
after it dissipated, the dog was fine as well?
Yep. And then that overwhelming feeling that we had felt just kind of disappeared and never felt it again after that.
Mm.
And yeah, he had died in his parents' room on a accidental overdose. So I imagine could have still hung around in there. And the last two things would be like a UFO encounters. First one was maybe around 6 or 7 years old. And my parents were coming back home from somewhere, and we were on a road, and it's like a real windy road through the trees. A real clear day, and my dad kind of craned his neck looking up through the windshield, and he was pointing. He was like, "Look at there, it's a UFO." So we all looked out, and it was like a perfect silver saucer, like perfectly round. It had like that small little dome, like at the top middle section of it, and it was flying kind of like at an angle going upwards. So instead of being like a plane that would fly, horizontally, it was going up. And I watched it as long as I could see it through the trees, and then just kind of disappeared into the clouds. And there was a story, I want to say from the '60s, and it was almost exactly like what I seen that day.
I mean, how big would you guess the
It
craft
was
was? How far from it were you?
it was pretty far. If I had to make any kind of guess, maybe around the 30,000 feet mark where planes would fly,
Mm-hmm.
and it was going steadily like further higher and higher. It was going pretty slow too. And the sunlight you could see shining off like one of the little edges in like a perfect silver color too.
That's a pretty cool sighting to see the classic saucer shape like that.
Yeah, like it was unmistakable, the shape. You try to think, well, maybe it was just an airplane, but no, it was perfect circle.
What did your dad say?
He just was kind of excited about it for a minute, and that was just kind of the end of it after that.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a cool sighting. I would love to see the classic saucer.
Yeah, when we pulled back in the house, I just ran straight out of the car in the yard trying to find it again. I couldn't see it anymore. And then the second one I'd seen, I had joined the army, and I was in Afghanistan at a little Green Beret fire base out in the mountains. And in one of the little brick mud hut buildings we had, you would get on the rooftop to pull your guard shift. So when you look outside, since there's no light pollution, you might see, say, 1,000 stars. But with the night vision, you would see 10 billion stars. So it's just amazing just staring up at the stars. And then there's a ridge line to one side that we had rocket attacks from. So you would always kind of scan it, make sure there was nothing coming. And I seen this light come up over the ridge. And at first I was thinking, maybe a rocket's coming. I gotta get ready for it. And then as it was coming in my direction, it like stopped. And then it took off like lightning fast at a sharp 90-degree angle to its right. And it went away, then it stopped, then it went at another 90-degree angle back the opposite way, and then it went straight up, like what faster than any jet we have could have gone. And it would go like so much distance, and then it would stop and hit another angle. And it did that a few times, and then it just shot back up towards the space direction and just disappeared. And then the next guy came and relieved me. I didn't say nothing about it. And then next morning, one of the guys said, "Man, I saw a UFO out there, and it took all these zigzag shapes and disappeared back into the sky." And there's about two people that saw it. And I just told them what I seen. And I knew it was no helicopter, no jet or anything, the way it moved like that.
That's pretty cool that the other guys actually ended up mentioning that. That probably was a relief.
Yeah, after that, it's like, all right, so I wasn't crazy. And I tried to look at it without the night vision on, but I just couldn't see it. I guess maybe it was just too far away.
And would you guess that was maybe the same height up as the first one you mentioned?
Um, maybe. It wasn't too high up above where the mountain ridge line was when it was doing the zigzags, and then when it shot straight up, it just went too fast to even see it anymore.
Wow. Yeah, there's quite a few stories out of Afghanistan. I'm sure there's, especially considering what you were there for and the fact that a lot of people don't like to talk about anything of that time. Who could blame them? I would hazard to say there's probably thousands of these kinds of stories that have just not been told from times of war.
Yeah, and just seeing a little light like that, can't really say what it is. So I think some people might not even think much about it.
Right. Because you guys are, when you're on a watch like that, you're up there by yourself. You're not up there right next to another person to where you can discuss it at the time.
Right. When we first got there, we were doing 2-man shifts, and nothing UFO or anything, but I seen what looked like a mountain lion at first. I jumped down on one of her walls, and when I looked it up the next day on the internet, it was a snow leopard.
Oh my gosh.
So that was pretty neat.
That is amazing. Those are like, I mean, very rare to see.
Yeah, like half the guys there didn't believe me. The other half did. And then when I got back stateside, National Geographic just put up a documentary about snow leopards in Afghanistan, and they had videos of them out there.
Oh, that's a cool sighting, Brian. That's really, yeah, I like that. I mean, people just, they're infamous for that. It's very rare to see one.
Yeah, the funny thing was I had sent the guy that was with me down to check the fuel for the generator. So I was leopard jumped down. I didn't want to say nothing. I didn't want to spook it and try to attack him or anything. Then when he came back, I told him that he freaked out about it.
Heck yeah, that is a cool sighting. That's a once in a lifetime situation right there.
Yeah, only one other guy had seen him when we were out on the trucks doing a patrol. Maybe some kind of cave out in the mountain system there.
Yeah. Well, did you want to cover the urban legend house, that photo that you sent me?
Oh yeah, and that was a house that he was a teacher that taught at a high school my brother had one too. He was 10 years older than me. And it might have been about a 5-minute drive from my house. And my friends that lived near there, we used to walk down to that house. And it was abandoned for years. Everyone around there had came up with their own urban tales for it, like the family was murdered, or the guy that had lived there, his parents were killed, and he had seen someone running out the back door. I never really found out what the truth happened. But my friends that had lived there, they would go by there and see lights flickering or the front door opening and closing real fast. Anytime you would go onto that road, it would instantly get cold all the way down until you get off to the next road. And when we went up there, take those pictures, I never seen anything happen, but as soon as you step in front of it, you could feel like something wanted you to not be there. And we had gone there at nighttime and knocked on the door just to see if we can get any kind of reaction. But I never seen anything. But my friend, he had seen like a hat man sighting. He was in the yard and seen like a shadow of a man with a hat kind of walking across the yard towards him, and scared him to death. He ran home and never went back there until me and him had went back years later.
So a teacher that you knew bought it. How long did he live there for?
I didn't personally know him. I knew he had taught at the school my brother had went. I don't know. I think he had moved out of there when he was real young and just left it abandoned and just had the property still under his name.
So then after that, nobody moved into the house.
No, just in the last few years, someone had bought the property and they tore down the house and just left the chimney. Yeah, going there now with the house gone, the cold chills and the feeling like something was there, it's just not there anymore.
Really?
Hmm.
See, when you said
I
that
don't.
they left the chimney up, I was like, uh-oh. I wonder, I mean, besides tearing the house down, that can kind of piss entities off or ghosts off. But that's interesting. So now there's a lighter feel to the area.
Yeah, I don't know like what it could be there throughout the day since I rarely go down through there nowadays. But at least from what I could tell, it's just a lighter feel.
Well, that really makes you wonder what went on then, if that is in fact then a situation now, because this whole time we've been talking about what goes on the land, but maybe in this case it was more attached to the house.
Yeah, 'cause as soon as you saw the house, when you got up to it, like you just wanted to run away. And it doesn't help that it was kind of creepy looking too.
It is a creepy looking house. Thank you for sending that picture. By the way, would it be possible for me to use that as the episode image, or would you rather me not?
Yeah, you can.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you guys are wondering about the house that we're talking about, it definitely looks creepy. It is the main episode image for Brian's episode. So that is the very house that we are speaking of. So even the Hat Man was seen at this place.
Yeah, that's what my friend told me. And then he would say, and they would go into the backyard, and in the top window, they could see like a ghostly face. And we had went there, and he pointed, and I could see it perfectly. And I took a picture of that, but he was trying to run away. I kept staring, but to me, it just looked like someone might have spray painted into the window. I know there was some of the older teenagers that had broke in there before and tried to find gold or whatever jewelry that was rumored to be in the house.
So you think that figure in the window just might have been a pareidolia situation?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking because it didn't move or anything.
Yeah. Well, at least,
I figured,
part of you is willing to debunk some things, right? You're like, well, that could just be a trick of the mind.
yeah, because I figured if it was going to be like a ghost or something, it would probably just disappear or kind of move away.
But you have been on that road and felt the temperature drop as you would be going up to the house?
Yeah, so you turn onto that road from the main road, it kind of just goes like a winding uphill through a lot of trees, and then all of a sudden you get to the yard, and but like halfway, as soon as you get onto that road, you start feeling the temperature drop.
Now, do you know of any mentions of, now I know you said, oh, there's rumors of a murder or murders going on there. Was there any rumor of a similar situation to one of your neighbors where it was like a Civil War hospital or anything having to do with the war?
Not that I know of. I just know the area was they had like skirmishes and stuff through it.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far from there, they had a revolutionary blockhouse. I think they had used for supply and stuff.
Yeah, goodness knows what
Another,
went on at that place then.
yeah, the whole area has weird stories. One of my brother's friends going down through one of the winding roads at night had seen a carriage, like a horse carriage, come down the road, and when he turned around to see what it was all about, it was gone.
That's a cool sighting.
I used to try to drive down through there like that, hope to see it, but I never got lucky.
When you saw that Confederate soldier, how far away would you guess that you were from him?
Probably maybe 80 feet.
And he wasn't see-through either. I mean, he looked like a normal person, like dressed up like that.
Yeah, like it was kind of that low light condition, so I couldn't really see the details perfect, but I could make out it was kind of like a dirty gray uniform that looked kind of ragged around the sleeves, and it had like a hat on and just kind of like it took a few steps and just disappeared.
Wow. Very cool and very sad.
Yeah, my grandpa used to tell me about his grandpa when he would ride home on his horse and carriage. There would be a lady that would want rides and a light in the sky that would come down like a fireball that would follow them around and stuff like that.
Mm,
But no one ever really had any real details about that so long
right.
ago.
Right. It would follow them around, though. Goodness gracious, what was going on there, right?
guess it would like come like down towards the road, then it would come at them, then they would jump over it, and people would go out there, kind of like it was playing with them, and then would just disappear again.
Yeah, those sentient balls of light are fascinating to me.
It kind of makes me think of the brown mountain light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the few things that I've seen with my own eyeballs is a ball of light in the woods. That's very cool to see. And it does seem like sometimes they want you to notice them and other times they don't. They kind of do this, oh crap, and then they go away. Any other stories that you wanted to share with us?
Can't really think of anything else. It's just a bunch of random stuff that happened over the years. Make you question what's going on.
So in the last several years, besides the one that you mentioned 5 or 6 years ago, there hasn't been much going on for you. Like you don't currently live in a haunted home, right? So you're not having to worry about footsteps or your names being called.
Yeah, not in my house now. Down towards the creek, I used to get kind of a weird feeling. I never seen or heard anything.
It's just Bigfoot looking out for you, just he's like, oh, well, when Brian's ready, I'll let him see me, but not too close. Not too close.
Yeah, I would say I did have like a, can't remember what it's called, where it feels like a predator puts off a vibration.
Mm-hmm.
You'd feel like a state of, like I shouldn't move any closer to the woods because it felt like something was there and was putting off something that I shouldn't get any closer to.
And that's at your place now?
Yeah. What's it called? Infrasound?
Infrasound, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say it was probably that because it kind of like paralyzed me. Like I should not go any closer to the wood line, and it put me like high on edge. Something could attack me at any moment. But I couldn't see anything through the trees or hear anything. And it's probably like 11 o'clock at night. And then once I backed away, the feeling kind of went away.
How far is the wood line from your house?
Maybe 15 feet.
Okay. So you're out there all the time. Have you felt that before?
No, that's the only time I felt it. I was out there walking my dog and I felt it.
Oh, well, how did the dog react?
She didn't react. She wasn't as close to the wood line like I was, but she just didn't seem to notice anything.
Yeah, maybe time to put some peanut butter jars out. No, just kidding. I don't know. Who knows what that was? But if you when you think of infrasound, it makes things very interesting.
Yeah, I never experienced it before like that. But whatever it was, it kind of just paralyzed me on edge.
Yeah, if you run into something else, you got to get in touch with me. I love stories like that too. Mm-hmm. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences.
Yes, thank you for letting me come on.